This Facebook page from the Rutherford Emergency Management Response Team denied a conspiracy theory that the government was going to seize the town of Chimney Rock.
We're learning that a man was arrested after reports of an armed threat against FEMA workers.
The day after our interview, a call was made to the Rutherford County Sheriff's Office saying an armed man had made a comment about possibly harming FEMA employees.
If you're participating in spreading this stuff, stop it. Whatever your aim is, the people you are really hurting are those in Western North Carolina who need help.
What are the priorities as far as next steps for FEMA?
We're transitioning into getting the infrastructure back up and running. We are already starting to talk about housing programs. We've got thousands of people in hotels temporarily here in North Carolina as well. So it's going to be an iterative process.
We're going to take a while.
Yep. And at the end of the day, we're all in it together. The local governments, the citizens, the state government, and FEMA. We're transitioning into getting the infrastructure back up and running. We are already starting to talk about housing programs.
The U.S. government did not geoengineer the storm. But like I said, some people, they're going to believe it no matter what.
So it's laughable how important it is to the government to combat misinformation versus actually doing their job. And the reason they have to do this is because people are waking up, because people are feeling government distrust, and they should. For them to sit there with a straight face, or at least attempt to have a straight face and say, well, these people out there spreading misinformation are causing government distrust. The government is the one who has already shown us that they've gone rogue. And anybody out there that didn't realize it after what occurred in 2020 needs to slap themselves in the face and wake up. Because the government proved that they've gone rogue. The Republicans, when Operation Warp Speed was rolled out, and the Democrats working together against the civilians. But as long as they keep you divided in that left-right trap, everybody out there is going to stay thinking that there's going to be a hero rising up on one side or the other. Now, people out there that don't see all these coincidences happening at once are either brain dead or they're just regressing as human beings, which I talked about, how human beings psychologically regress and they start acting like children again when they're confronted with things like what we're seeing right now, because they can't face confrontation. And the confrontation they're facing is a rogue government who is weaponizing weather, who is locking you in your homes, who is getting you to poison yourself and get nanotechnology. I mean, there's so many things that they're doing right now, and everybody out there should be able to see it. You're definitely feeling it. You're definitely feeling it. You might not be understanding it, but that's what people like me are here to try to help you understand, because there's a lot of things happening at once, right? There's a lot of things happening at once. The towers that have popped up, the geoengineering with the weather, getting certain tech inside of your body, the switch over to digital ID, the carbon laws and the carbon footprint. These things all tie in together, so you have to pay attention. And little by little, you have to start wrapping your head around exactly how all this works. Because if you're not paying attention, you're going to get sucked into it and duped into it via either being exhausted by it or just buying into their propaganda that they're pushing. So you heard the guy, of course, with his grin on his face say it's not geoengineering. And you heard the guy talk about infrastructure, right? Because that's the key here. Infrastructure. They want to rebuild the infrastructure. But what he doesn't tell you is that getting the infrastructure back up isn't the old infrastructure. It's a new infrastructure, right? And of course, our alliance is creating smart city governance is, of course, the World Economic Forum's main goal, right? The fourth industrial revolution that they constantly talk about and the great reset that we're currently in has to do with all of these things, right? That's what this has to do with. And all of our world leaders, supposedly elected, who are not elected, go to these meetings and they talk about not only how we need a great reset, how we need a complete overhaul of the infrastructure, how we need AI governance. Well, the only way to do that is to sabotage the current infrastructure, which is what you see going on right now. So some of the key points in there that people need to pay attention to, of course, not only their desperation of how they have to bring out the governor, they have to bring out all these government officials and agents to talk about how dangerous we all are so that they could hit the surface level thinking of most of the civilians out there to think that we're the enemy, that we're putting up barriers that prevent the government from helping, when most civilians should be saying, who cares what those people are saying online? If what they're saying is crazy, it shouldn't prevent people who work for the government from actually helping civilians. But what they do is they create false flags around it, right? Some guy calls in because he heard a conspiracy theory and he says he's going down to FEMA and he's going to confront FEMA workers because he was listening to somebody on YouTube, right? Then they want us to take accountability for it when we're actually just piecing together what's really occurring. Because if you actually understand how FEMA works, this whole $750, oh, FEMA's going broke. They want these narratives out there that you believe. They want you to believe that FEMA's going broke because FEMA is housing illegal immigrants, okay? FEMA has at least $4 billion, which has all been funded via our tax money, okay? That money is not there to provide assistance for people after these storms hit. It's to seize land. It's for government buyouts. They're buying out people's land and property with our tax money. We're funding the entire operation that's going on. But there's narratives that they want out there, and then there's real narratives. The narratives that they want out there is $750, illegal immigrants. What they don't want you to realize is that the entire FEMA operation, the entire setup, and the entire legality of it all is that FEMA and the government can seize your land. But they need propaganda, like you heard at the end of the video, of how FEMA, your local government, your federal government, the civilians, we're all in this together, right? Because this is your most common brainwashing, your oldest communist propaganda in the book that they're currently using. Community, love, instead of facing people who are doing this to people's lives. If every civilian out there realized that they were being played, If they woke up and they realized that, wow, I'm being completely played. These people are not working for me. If you saw some secret conversation between Biden and Trump or something that would make you snap out of the left-right paradigm, snap out and realize, wow, our vote actually doesn't even count in the first place, there would be an actual revolution. There would be an actual stopping of this from occurring. But meanwhile, while the civilians are so divided, most civilians are trying to disarm other civilians via the propaganda that they're seeing, which would actually empower this rogue government even more. So the articles that are out there talking about how FEMA, Politico and stuff have released articles this week talking about how North Carolinians probably won't take the federal buyouts after Hurricane Helene. Well, guess what? They're just going to keep hitting you over and over and over again if you don't take the government buyout, because they have a map that we can't see of where they expect all of us to be. And they're going to make all these areas unlivable. They're not going to fix these areas. They're not going to bring you back in. Ask the people in Lahaina. They put you into temporary housing. It becomes permanent housing. You think if they told you that the FEMA housing was permanent, that you would go into it? No, of course you wouldn't. It's like, oh, look, temporary housing. Ooh, I feel so special. They're putting me up in a hotel. Yeah, go to a hotel for a week, okay? And then stay there an extra 3 weeks. That hotel, the first week you're there, you're excited, you're on vacation. You're like, this is great, I'm on vacation. You want to get out of there. After about 4 weeks, you'd say to yourself, okay, I'm sick of living in a hotel room. This ain't great. This ain't special. It's like being in a prison cell almost, right? And suddenly it's not a vacation anymore. It ends up being like a prison that you're stuck in, right? But they don't, when you go on vacation, it's a vacation. It's temporary. You're not told when you go to the hotel room that you're going to live in there for the rest of your life. Otherwise, you probably wouldn't go, right? They're like, hey, you're going to Aruba? Well, okay, Aruba's great. But it's not so great in the off season and hurricane season. It's certainly not great if you're living in that hotel room that's about 700 square feet with your family of 4 for the rest of your life. You'd say, well, I'm going to think again about that. But they don't tell you that. They tell you, oh, we're here to help. Look, we're giving you somewhere to live. We're not telling you that we're the ones who wiped out your home and ruined your life because we don't want you to rise up against us. So, of course, we're telling you that this is, an effect of the climate. Now you're living in the temporary housing. We're the heroes for giving you the temporary housing. And every time you ask if you could leave the temporary housing, we're just going to tell you, well, it's not ready yet. It's not ready yet. And then after 2 years, you're just going to start realizing that this is your new home. And then we're going to either tell you got to start paying rent here, or we're going to kick you out of here, but your home is unlivable. You can't go back to your land anymore. There's no fight left in you anymore because you're completely exhausted. And you move on with your life, right? So when the government comes in and says they want to buy your land, the lesson to be learned is when you say no, that they're likely going to hit you with weaponized weather. But it doesn't matter if you say yes or you say no, because there's ultimately a plan in place where they're herding us like cattle and they're moving us around. And the main thing that keeps us stuck in their plan, stuck as cogs in their wheel, is us being divided as civilians in the left and right paradigm. But most people should see that type of propaganda from 60 Minutes, and they should say to themselves, why do they keep talking about this crap, right? Now, the government wants to respond to that by saying, well, we're talking about it because somebody threatened them. Somebody threatened government officials. Now, the common person, of course, would never, ever think that the government would make up a story like that and make up what we call either a false flag event or a psyop, right? Which that, again, was a psyop because nothing actually occurred. Just we were told somebody made a phone call, somebody made a threat, they show us a mugshot. Just like the event at the pizzeria, we're supposed to believe that it's real. So then our brain is supposed to tell us that people who talk about this or question the government's narrative are dangerous because their thoughts are leading people to action, right? It's all make-believe. It's make-believe so that you don't question all these things that are happening at once, which you should automatically be suspicious of. The government is doing this. The government isn't just overreaching in your life. The government's meddling in your life to the point where not only do they want inside your home with their tech, but they also want to ruin your home. They also want to demolish your home. They also want to take you out and seize your land. And for anyone out there that doubts it, don't forget in the beginning of the whole outbreak, the Dems were against Operation Warp Speed. They were pro what they are pro now, right? And it flipped. And that shows you just how easily they have you under mind control, under hypnotism, that they could take a political figure's opinion and then make it and mold it into your opinion. And they could flip you around on a dime to feel this or feel that or be angry at this person versus that person. 10 years ago, nobody cared about the stuff we were talking about. Everyone said we're crazy, that stuff was going to never happen. Now that stuff is happening. And the main goal of the government is to constantly talk about all of us, right? And instead of people waking up going, oh yeah, those people were talking about it, I did call them crazy. And it's not about us sitting here saying we're right, you were wrong. It's about stopping this from going any further. That's it. That's all that it's about. But most people out there hear it and they're like, oh, but these people are dangerous now. And they don't think for themselves, well, why weren't we dangerous 10 years ago? Oh, because all this stuff wasn't happening in front of you 10 years ago and the government wasn't telling you that we were a threat. So you were just thinking we're crazy lunatics. Now you're seeing that we're correct and the government's convincing you that not only are we crazy lunatics, but we're dangerous. We're dangerous because now we're sowing government distrust. But we're not the ones sowing government distrust. The government is showing you government distrust. The government is showing you that they can't be trusted. They just showed you in 2020 by their actions, by their flip-flopping, by their lying, by now just ignoring all the stuff that they did to you, by conditioning you into what's coming with the carbon footprint, all things they don't want you to realize or learn. The government is not your friend. Wake up. The government has gone rogue. And if you don't understand how all this stuff works with secret societies and networking and how they've all put themselves in these positions, you can watch all the videos over on my website, or you could just do a deeper dive and try and figure out how this works, which would mean do a deep dive on secret societies and learn about how they've networked, how, oh, these Ivy League schools and these secret societies like Skull and Bones, or just secret societies in your town like the Freemasons and the Eastern Star Lodge, and how they're all members of it. And their oath is to one another. Their oath is not to you. Their oath is not to me. Their oath is to their brotherhood, to their fellowship. And by definition, that is treason. So this is 60 Minutes pushing propaganda. I'm sure some of you have seen the FEMA housing that has popped up outside of North Carolina, inside and outside of North Carolina, that whole region. A lot of pictures have come where you see these FEMA camps. There's even stories out there of, you know, this is the point, right, that I'm trying to make, that people don't get it, who are like, look, you're interfering with the government, what they're trying to do. If the government and the civilians were working together, then the government would be putting up barricades trying to prevent civilians from helping victims of these floods, right? The government created the floods. The government's now sitting there preventing people from coming in and aiding these people. But there's stories out there even about where people who own warehouses offering space to use for distribution of supplies for people who are affected. Instead, FEMA took over the warehouse and had these people are getting evicted from their warehouses so that FEMA could have control of their warehouses and their supplies, and they're not distributing it. So it's about more than just $750. It's about more than illegal immigrants. It's about taking control of situations that they're creating, seizing people's land, rounding them up, rebuilding infrastructure, and hurting you where they want to hurt you. FEMA is not your friend. Big Brother's not your friend. I wish that they were. I don't want to sit here and have to say these things, and I shouldn't even have to say it. Everybody out there is feeling it. They just don't know where to look or to turn. They're turning to politicians for help, and that's part of the goal that they have put in place. They want you to turn to compromised people so that there isn't a revolution. None of us want to actually feel the way that we're feeling, but we are. Everybody's bothered by it. Everybody feels that something's terribly wrong going on in the world, not just in America. And the distrust that everyone feels is because the government's proving to us that they can't be trusted. And what people like me are saying is, take your foot off the gas. You got all the money you want. You got all the resources you want. Stop. But they won't stop. They're continuing forward. And now their main goal isn't to aid civilians in need. Their main goal is to brainwash you into thinking that we're the enemy of the state, when in reality, your rogue government is. I thank you for being here. Hope you're all doing well. God bless you and your families, as always.